name is Seth Paine, and I'm the developer of web and new media for the Coming Home Network. When I was growing up, faith was very important to my parents and to my whole family. My parents became Christians. They accepted Christ as their Savior just a few years before I was born. And so I was born going to a small Baptist church in Massachusetts. And they were, from what I perceived, they were really into their faith. We went to church every Sunday morning. They had a Bible study they went to every Wednesday night. We went to prayer services a lot on Sunday evenings. And we were really involved in the church, I remember growing up. I was on a cross-cultural trip with my Evangelical college in England, and we went to a service at Westminster Abbey. And it was the first time in my life where I had experienced something of faith that was that old. And I remember thinking, people have been worshiping in this location, in this way, for hundreds of years. And I started to feel a hunger for something that was older than the churches that I had experienced growing up. I moved back up to Boston and started going to a non-denominational church in the Boston area. And right away I joined a Bible study. And one of the leaders of the Bible study was a man named Tom. He had left the church when he was 13. But there are things that he loved about the church. He would bring St. Francis, he would bring St. Augustine, he even brought some passages from the Catechism to our Bible study. We watched Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon one night, and I'm like, this is really interesting. This kind of sounds like that ancient faith that I experienced a little bit at Westminster Abbey. Then one day I was having breakfast with a friend of mine, and she said that she had grown up Catholic. And because I was talking to her about these things I was reading with Tom, and there were a lot of things she didn't like about the Catholic Church, but she missed the Mass. And every once in a while she said there was a comfort in the Mass, and she missed it. And so I said, well, I've never been to Mass, and I've been reading all this stuff. I'd love to experience it sometime. Why don't we go to Mass somewhere? She's like, oh, that'd be great. And so we pulled out the yellow pages, we opened it up, looked at all the listings of the Catholic churches, and I saw one that had an etching of the front of the church building. And I said, that's really beautiful, let's go there. And this is the church that we went to. And we walked in, and I was just struck by the beauty of this church. And so we came in, we got here about 15 minutes early, and this woman came up to us, and because there's no one else, like maybe 3 or 4 people in the church. She came up to us and she said, would you two like to present the gifts? And I looked at her and I said, but I'm not Catholic. And she said, oh, don't worry about it, that's fine. So my first time ever stepping into a Catholic church, and I was presenting the gifts. And looking back, I see that as one of the moments of God's humor in my life, that's saying, this is where you're going to end up. About a year after that, I decided I need to take this seriously. I don't want to just go to Mass. I started feeling drawn. If I'm going to go to Mass, and if I think it's true, and I think it's good and beautiful, then I need to seriously consider this and say, well, maybe I need to be Catholic. And so I stopped going to my non-denominational church. I went to Mass every week. And a couple months after that, I looked up the RCA director, contacted her, and said, you know what, if she's asking me, well, have you been to Mass? She's asking me all these questions and basically asking, am I ready to consider becoming Catholic? And I said, I'm at that point. And I left with such a sense from God that I was doing the right thing. I had the most profound peace the rest of the day. And so I went through RCA, and then I was confirmed Easter 2008. The great thing about the fact that my first time in Mass, I was asked to present the gifts, tied in to what Father John, the priest that confirmed me, said to me a number of times as I was going through that process of RCA. I had talked to him a lot, and he ended up being my spiritual director for a while. But I had talked to him a lot about my experience as an evangelical. I talked to him about my passions as an evangelical, that I loved small group ministry, that Bible study was so important. Short-term missions was so important to me. I'd been volunteering with a nonprofit for a number of years and had gone on at least 10 different missions trips, short-term missions trips to different countries all over the world. And that was so important to me. And he told me a number of times, he said, you should never leave anything behind that you have from your days in Evangelical. He said, bring it with you. Bring it with you into the Catholic Church because we need it. And so the image of presenting the gifts, my first Mass, was so profound because through Father John, God was telling me that I need to bring all that I have and present it to him.